What's happening? Welcome to the Cinema MD podcast. My name is Matt.
And I'm Dana.
So we're a little bit late on this episode due to, real life stuff popping up. That being said, we got a couple of reviews for you today. We're going to be talking about The Mountain Between Us and the new hotness, Blade Runner 2049, that somehow managed to bomb at the box office. I'm not really too surprised about that, but I'll get into that later. You want to get started with The Mountain Between Us?
Sure. I think you might have a different title for it. Maybe The Mountain of Shit Between Us? Would that be fair? Is that an accurate description for Matt Kekkonen?
I didn't really like this movie, if that's what you're inferring. I thought this movie was, and if you follow any of my social media, I've said this before, but this is basically a really solid, high budget, big cast, Lifetime original movie. That's pretty much what it seemed like to me.
Yeah, I think I got sucked in a little bit to the survival story of it. I personally love episodes of the show I Shouldn't Be Alive. I don't know if anyone else out there has ever seen that show.
I can tell you right now. I'm interrupting you because I can tell you right now. Someone out there has seen the show.
Yes.
In the world.
A lot of times when I talk about it, though, people don't know what I'm talking about. So, I shouldn't be alive.
Clearly, they're not as cultured as me and you, having watched survival garbage reality TV shows.
I love a good reenactment. So maybe that's why I enjoyed this movie a little bit initially, is that it was, a decent, reenactment on, a, true story TV show, cable TV.
Yeah, one thing I will say positive about the movie. Idris Elba and Kate Winslet are good actors. And they did some good acting. And they had to because it was a bad script and a bad movie.
Yeah, plot was a little bit thin. There were some timeline issues, I felt like. Not that they're going to show you every single day of this journey. Obviously what you know from the previews, plane has crashed, people are hurt, they have to survive and get down a mountain. But yeah, it seemed like it had been a few days, maybe a week, and I think Kate Winslet made a comment about that it had been 3 weeks.
Kate Winslet made a comment that it had been approximately 3 weeks, and that was, shortly before the big sex scene of the movie, which, how fucking gross would that be? 3+ weeks stranded on a mountaintop in your winter clothes, just walking around, huddling up at a fire, sweating, gross, shitting your pants, whatever. And then
I don't think shitting your pants is mandatory if you're stuck on a mountain.
Did I mention she had a broken leg and couldn't move for 3 days? Shitting her pants.
I suppose. The immediate detail that my dear husband noticed was as people were, disrobing, Kate Winslet in particular, that she had some clean, shorn pits, just not a 5 o'clock shadow in sight. No.
Call me crazy, but I would have appreciated a little, a one-liner there, like Idris Elba throwing a little quip out, did you shave? Incredulous, as I was watching the movie. And, Kate Winslet dropping the casual, laser. It would have been a good moment for a little joke.
Listen, this movie is the height of melodrama, so I don't think that the, goofy pre-sexy time quips are what the writers had in mind.
Let me also say that from the start of this movie, the only sense of drama or suspense that I felt was whether or not the dog was going to die. They ruined that for me because every ad on the internet has in big bold letters, "Don't worry, the dog survives." That was actually a marketing technique for this movie.
What's funny is that when I saw previews for this, I didn't even notice the dog. But yeah, the dog was the high point in the film because he just looked like he was having the best time ever. Just like romping through the snow, like the dog was pumped to be on that mountain.
Speaking of dogs, our dogs are with us in the studio for this wonderful podcast recording. It's less a studio and more my personal office. So, yeah, they're just hanging out in here, and we're hoping they're good dogs today.
They're usually not good dogs. Usually we send them to Grandma's house.
Yes. So, if you're picturing us in some big fancy recording studio, think again.
We got pugs and corgs.
Corgis.
I was, trying to do a thing.
I know, but for the uninitiated, say the whole word, maybe they don't get it. So, the mountain between us, if you don't know the plot, it's very simple. Two strangers end up on the same little charter flight over the mountains. By the way, one of the plot points at the beginning of the movie, they build up this whole, there's a giant storm overhead, all the planes are grounded, so they had to get this private pilot to fly them. Well, you'd think maybe this storm causes their plane crash that they have. But would you be wrong? The storm plays zero effect in the story whatsoever.
Yeah, pilot has a stroke, and, they crash. But, yeah, there really was never, a storm. it's not like that compounded the issue or problem. Oh, no, and there's a storm, and now they're snowed in or something. No, just
an entire airport shut down due to a storm that never had any impact on the movie whatsoever, other than to cause them to get a flight from an old man with a dog who then has a stroke mid-flight out of nowhere. Coolsies.
Yeah, so not a strong start on the plot points here.
Yeah, the melodrama was thick, the plot was stupid. For a movie that took place in the mountains, it didn't look as pretty as I wanted it to look. It was no Revenant, There was no Emmanuel Lubitsky beautiful cinematography going on here.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, there's not going to be any awards for cinematography for this one. There was no... sweeping landscapes or even interesting camera shots. It was all pretty straightforward.
And let me tell you about my favorite moment of this whole gem that we're talking about here. Once the whole ordeal is done, well, Idris Elba, of course, goes back to London. And they show a fucking scene, like a still shot almost of... You can tell it's London because there's a fucking double-decker bus. Oh, look, we're showing you this. He's back in London. You can tell because we're showing you this little stock footage scene. And it was fucking stock footage. And it was cheap stock footage because it was not in HD. It was a fuzzy, shitty picture of London. And I could not believe that it was in the movie. And they did not fucking just realize it was a terrible idea. They thought nobody would notice. We all fucking noticed.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was like if you took your phone and you went to your mom's house who still has a tube TV and recorded a scene off of her TV with your phone. And then they were like, okay, good enough. We're just going to show it for 3 to 5 seconds and then we're going to move on. But yeah, all of a sudden this the scene changed and I really thought they were showing that it was going to back up and they were showing a TV screen, but no, they were just signaling that he was back in London. It was cool.
They just sent some fucking key grip out to London with their Motorola Razr and had them record some footage real quick, and that was what they used. It was pathetic. It was an egregious fuck up. I don't know what happened, but it was so obvious to me that was just a disaster.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
The rest of the movie's not very good. The ending of the movie's pretty bad. Everything about the movie's pretty bad. I hated this movie. I thought this movie sucked.
I walked away from it not with such pure hatred as I have, other movies this year or in my life. So I just think it's really funny that Matt hates it so much. But it truly was pretty bad.
Now, I want to also say, yes, I'm a big fan of Idris Elba. And I just think it's funny that the two movies of his that I've reviewed on this podcast are The Dark Tower and Mountain Between Us, because he was not bad in either movie. In fact, he's probably the best part of both of those movies. But holy shit, those are bad movies. Like, what are they doing to Idris Elba? Like, why can he not get in good movies? I mean, does he need a new agent that maybe reads scripts a little better? Does he need to read scripts better himself? Does he need to make better life decisions? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, maybe we just need to, sit him down for some coffee. We can have him as a guest on the show, and we can talk about it.
I feel like he's more of a tea drinker.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
He's from London.
I wasn't going to attempt it. I'm glad you went for it.
Now, Kate Winslet, I'm just going to give her a pass on this one because she usually can do no wrong. So, and I felt like she would have been the one that would have been like, you know what? Artistic integrity here. I need to have some hair in my underarm region for the sex scene. Like it didn't need to be like shaggy dog craziness, but a little stubble would have gone a long way to suspending my disbelief.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they really kind of glossed over. I feel like more often than not, survival stories are about either the characters or people's complete lack of skills or lack of knowledge and I don't know how to survive, or there's at least maybe one person who, it's explained for some reason they have the skills to survive. Here, it was very clear that Kate Winslet's character was the impulsive, adventurous type. She was like a, photographer or photojournalist, we'll say, that in the field doing stuff, getting in the nitty gritty of things. But it really was Idris Elba that held everything together and was able to help them survive, and he was a neurosurgeon, which so sure he was smart and logical, but how did he know how to make a fire? I guess in dire circumstances we'd all like to think we could make a fire, but could we really? I'm not sure.
Yeah, this entire movie didn't make much sense though. It was basically, instead of anything actually happening the way it would happen, this was like a love conquers all, because we love because we need each other, and we develop this connection that we can make it through anything. And what really was the case in this movie was that Kate Winslet had a fucking broken leg and dragged him down horribly, and he would have been escaped and could have gone and gotten help within 48 hours had her broken leg, gimpy ass not been dragging him behind. It seemed like they really, I don't know, it just seemed like they weren't that far away from help, and if he wasn't dragging somebody with a broken leg behind him, he probably would have been able to get help within a couple days. They had enough food on the plane. The whole situation could have been much simpler.
Yeah, but you can't leave her alone. She doesn't,
She fought off a mountain lion with a flare gun in the first 30 minutes of the movie. No. She was fine.
Actually, and how it happened is actually she leaves first, but
because she's stubborn.
But yes, but that's the whole reoccurring theme throughout the movie is, the mountain between them being several different things. One, the literal mountain of them trying to get back. The mountain of their personality differences. He's very rigid and structured and controlling, and she's a free spirit and
the mountain of the fact that her character is married happily, or actually engaged happily. She missed her. She was on the way to her wedding.
Yeah, which, way to go, jerk. You shouldn't be out of town right before your wedding.
And let me talk about, oh man, I call it a Lifetime original movie. Some guys in this movie that you may see in Lifetime original. I feel like these are Hallmark movie alumnus here. Dermot Mulroney and Beau Bridges. When's the last fucking time you saw Beau Bridges in a movie?
They're actors. They've done stuff. And then look,
when's the last time they were in a major theatrical studio release?
They're still doing stuff, because this pretty much just
Dermot
classifies
Mulroney
as stuff.
Has not been in a movie since My Best Friend's Wedding.
Listen, I can't verify that right now because.
Oh, actually, wait. What was Dermot Mulroney in? You know what he was in? The D Train.
That was a great movie.
The D Train was a great movie. Some
Sleeper.
old man walked out of the theater when we were seeing D Train because Jack Black getting railed by James Marsden in the movie was just too much for him to handle. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, it was a great moment.
And Beau Bridges, I don't remember him in anything since the late 90s, and that was not made for TV. I feel like he's a made for TV superstar.
Sure. I can't confirm or deny, so I'll let you have it.
All right. So The Mountain Between Us, if I was going to give this a numerical score from 1 to 10, I would give this a solid 3 based on the talent of the primary characters alone and on nothing else whatsoever.
I guess I'm gonna go. I'll give it a 3.5 to 4, only because I did not have as visceral a reaction to this film as you did.
No, you liked it when we got out of the theater.
I did.
You
I was
were like,
okay.
You could not believe that I hated this movie.
I was just
You were
surprised that you
incredulous.
felt so strongly. But if this was, say, on TV on a rainy Sunday, would I, have it on in the background while I'm doing laundry? Sure, why not?
So what you're saying, it's basically a soap opera.
Yeah, that's fine. For that score.
Lifetime original bullshit. Mountain Between Us. So the next movie we're going to talk about is, of course, Blade Runner 2049. This, I believe, is this is a super hyped movie. There's no kind of way around that. I feel like a lot of people had this on their most anticipated list, even above something like Star Wars Episode 8. Dana, on the other hand, had not seen the original Blade Runner up until the day before we went to see this movie.
Yep. So to recap my experience with the original Blade Runner, when I had first seen this movie on a different occasion, it was at a friend's house. We were all hanging out and socializing, so it wasn't really the main focus of the evening. I fell asleep. So I set myself up with a beverage at 3 o'clock on an afternoon and just got ready. And I started to fall asleep right away. Visually, it's cool. Even though obviously it's old, it's still got some cool effects going. I love the music. I think the music was awesome, but it is slow. It just kind of, for some reason, the combination just lulls me a little bit. So I really fought hard to stay conscious for the whole thing. The story is cool too. I think the idea and everything behind it is neat. But is this like a super cult classic? I can't believe how good it is. Love it for me? Not really. It was a cool story. I think it set a good foundation for the new movie.
So, in comparing Blade Runner 2049 to the original, I think it compares favorably. I guess I like the original better. In that, maybe part of it's nostalgia. Part of it's the fact that I just really loved some of the characters in the movie. I don't really want to take anything away from the new one because I thought it was great. So, quick reaction, I enjoyed the original better than Blade Runner 2049.
I guess I would say that I liked the newer one better if I'm going to say I liked one over the other. But usually with, original stories and sequels, I kind of like to look at it as a, continuation of one full story. So I, hate to say, I'm not poo-pooing the original at all either, but, the new one was excellent, albeit a little bit long.
I think both the movies are long movies. You're looking at, a 2.5 hour time investment for pretty much either one. You're in it for kind of the look and feel of the movie, the visual, like the audio visual kind of aspect of the movie. Obviously the plot is not, it's something that detracts from the movie, but I don't think it's the most important thing going on in the film either. It asks some societal questions. You've got the what makes someone human kind of theme going on. And in the new film, I have to say Ryan Gosling is pretty fantastic. I like Ryan Gosling anyways. I'm a big fan of his. He's spectacular in this movie, and he pretty much has to carry the whole movie. It's his movie. It's not this is not like the Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford show. This is the Ryan Gosling show, guest starring Harrison Ford.
Yeah, definitely. And for the most part, I love Ryan Gosling also. I think he does a great job. I will say, I think I've seen him a little too much in some SNL skits recently because there were just a couple lines or words that he would kind of lapse into his own special Ryan Gosling accent that he does, or has, I should say. And I just expected almost like a slapstick comment or something, goofy to come out of his mouth. And it just kind of made me smile internally. It really didn't take away from the movie at all. It was just purely my own sort of fantasy of how the movie could take a comedic turn.
Yeah, all of the performances in the movie are great. There's some really cool effects in this movie, and I don't mean necessarily like special effects. I guess I'm talking more ideas in the movie. There's a female character who is, I don't want to really it's not really a spoiler, but there's a female character that basically is like a like an AI, like a computer program, and not in the way that like a replicant is an AI. Like it's actually it's almost like if Siri was like a hologram.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a really high quality hologram.
Yeah, and it's a super cool effect, and it's almost I feel like the thing I found myself comparing it to, like on an emotional level in the movie, was Wilson from Castaway.
Sure, I could see that.
I mean, this is definitely much more realistic and interactive, but like knowing that it's still literally just like something saved to a hard drive.
I guess I had thought more of oh gosh, the movie with Joaquin Phoenix. Her,
yeah. That's definitely the closest comparison.
Right, that's kind of the more obvious or on the nose comparison.
The only real difference there being that this is audio visual as opposed to just like an audio AI. So This is much more of a real thing. You have the same questions in this movie that you have in Blade Runner, which is you're basically wondering who the replicants are the entire movie. You still don't get your dead set answer about Deckard. You're wondering at the end of Blade Runner, is he also maybe a replicant? They bring that question up again in this movie towards the end, and it's done subtly. It's not like thrown in your face, but they still don't give you an answer. Like, they open up the possibility that replicants have open-ended lifespans. So yes, is it possible that that Harrison Ford's character has been a replicant the entire time? Absolutely, but they're not interested in giving you a definite answer either.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of resolutions in the film, honestly. There were, sort of this unfolding mystery throughout the film that does reach a climax, but it's sort of towards the end of the movie is where they introduce a whole new aspect to everything. And like a new group, and really, yeah, nothing gets like super set in stone. This is the end of the story. All your questions are answered. So you can, pros and cons to that. Obviously, you can take that, you might like that, you might hate it. I don't know.
Yeah, you've almost got this grand scope with these warring factions of, like, you've got this faction that wants replicants to basically get human rights. And there's a plot point that is going to potentially help this happen, but they don't get to that point. The movie isn't really interested in dealing with the large-scale consequences of what's going on. It's much more interested in kind of these interpersonal relationships. In particular, with Harrison Ford's character, that's kind of where he comes into play here. And that's how the movie ties directly into the original, is through his character and the Rachel character from the original movie. So, without getting into spoiler territory, Blade Runner 2049 is an excellent follow-up to Blade Runner. I don't think any fans of Blade Runner are going to be let down. I think anyone that loves the original is going to love this movie as well. I think if you didn't like Blade Runner, this isn't going to make any new fans, though. It's still long. It still takes a while to kind of get where it's going. it's a mystery. I mean, it's not something. It's a slow burn. There's not a ton of action. There's a couple, I would say, prevalent action scenes in the movie, but that's not what the movie's about. It's about the characters more than anything, and about the kind of the whole like setting and world that they've developed. It's cliche to say that like the setting is another character, but in this movie, it's, you don't have the Blade Runner movies without the unique, sort of dystopian future that they've developed.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting, too, that it almost seems like the replicants in this future time are treated even worse than the original film, or like kind of looked down upon as, super subhuman, not a real living thing, that kind of thing. Which, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but I feel like could kind of correlate to today's political climate a little bit, where we seem to be dealing with issues that we thought were far in the past, but have kind of all come back around even worse. So, I don't know. I could see some parallels there.
No, it's no secret that I think that the director was trying to make, if not a political statement, at least a statement on sort of whether it refers to whatever, the treatment of immigrants, the treatment of minorities. He's going for a parallel there. It's pretty obvious. And it makes sense in context of the movie, so it's not really ham-fisted or overdone. The fact of the matter is, when you really think about the, implications of an artificial human population that, it absolutely is doing jobs that other humans would have done before, is capable of doing jobs that other humans can't do. Like they're stronger than normal humans. I mean, realistically, if this happened in the real world, this is how replicants would be treated, in my opinion. I don't think that this is far off the mark.
No, definitely not.
So, all in all, Blade Runner 2049 is an excellent movie. Again, I would talk about it more, but I think the more we say, the more potential is there to just veer off into Spoilerville. And it's like there's so many, like the movie, I could say something and it would be a spoiler, but then it'll go in a completely different direction. I do feel like the movie kind of does keep you guessing, and that's a good thing. But the less you know going into it, other than what you already know from the original film, the better. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it my 9 out of 10. I loved it. I love the original Blade Runner, and I think this, at least, it meets it in every way. I only prefer the original due to the fact that I saw it first, and I'm nostalgic, I think. And I love Harrison Ford.
Who doesn't love Harrison Ford? Crazy old man now. But yeah, I obviously liked it a lot too. I thought that it was really well done. Still a really interesting story, even if it is, long and a little bit slow. But I feel like if I go into a movie knowing ahead of time how long it is, I can kind of mentally prepare, and I'm all good. So my score on this would be, I'm going to give it an 8, just because I don't have the super nostalgia factor with the original. So I do think it's an excellent film, and a really cool story, really good ideas. But yeah, it's an 8 for me.
All right, so that does it for our two new release reviews this week. This episode's a little late. Obviously, normally this would be out on Thursday. We do have a horror movie episode still coming up this week, and it will probably be released within a day of this episode. So if you're listening to this, check the next day, and we should have another episode out there for you with a couple horror reviews. And hopefully we'll be back on schedule on like our Thursday, Sunday schedule, or at least something very near that this coming week. Personal matters, work, all that stuff has sort of bogged us down with a whole lot going on right now. So that being said, if you haven't subscribed to us yet on iTunes, please do that. Leave us some reviews. The more reviews we get on iTunes, the higher up their search engines we pop up, which is always good. It means more listeners, more feedback, more comments, and the more feedback we get, the better we can make the show. Also, if anyone has any suggestions for some badass intro and outro music, or if you want to make some for us, I would be all about it. So any comments, any suggestions, any ideas, shoot us an email, cinemamdpodcast@gmail.com. Social media everywhere, Cinema MD Podcast. And look for our next episode with some horror reviews. Talk to you later.
Bye.